are singing, singing for our lives. We are a justice-seeking people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a justice-seeking people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a land of many colors, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a land of many colors, and we are singing, singing for our lives.
Good morning.
Good
Good
morning.
Thank you, women in the round. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Ames. My name is Amy Slagle, and I serve here on our Sunday Services Committee. I'm happy to welcome you to this community of caring and of justice seekers. Many of the people around you have found a spiritual home here after searching for a place that is caring and welcoming of our individual gifts. What we share here is not an unchanging dogma, but an affirmation that we are called to be agents of love and justice, and to build a world where everyone is cherished for who they are. Doing that requires us, we who have privilege, to use our voices, our courage, and our resources to dismantle oppression in all its forms. This morning I have just one announcement. It is the third Sunday of the month, so it is Social Justice Sunday. So after our service, we have our monthly gathering in room 3 downstairs at 11:15. We may not be able to change the world, but we can change ourselves. Please consider joining in that conversation after the service today. And finally, I want to extend a special thank you and appreciation for all of the participants in today's service. People put in extra time and energy, and I really appreciate everybody coming together this Sunday morning.
Our chalice lighting this morning is from Reverend Rebecca Savage. We light our flaming chalice as a beloved people, united in love and thirsting for restorative justice. May it melt away the tethers that uphold whiteness in our midst. May it spark in us a spirit of humility. May it ignite in us radical love that transforms our energy into purposeful action. This is a chalice of audacious hope. This chalice shines a light on our shared past, signaling our intention to listen deeply, reflect wisely, and move boldly toward our highest ideals. Please remain seated for our opening hymn, number 1040, Hush. Amber will play it through once, we will sing it twice, and Elijah is accompanying today on a variety of percussion, including a guayro.
announcement from Religious Education this morning. Our Secret Friends program is back, this year with a new name, Mystery Pals, and a fun Pokemon twist. So what is Mystery Pals? Well, in this lively intergenerational program, kids, youth, and adults are matched in pairs with the goal of getting to know a little more about each other. Every week for a month, until your identities are revealed at the final Mystery Pal party, which will be here March 3rd in the fireside room during coffee hour. If you would like to sign up, the registration link was in Friday's newsletter, or you can come find me after the service. I'll be happy to answer questions or help you fill out the form. And now, today's story is by Doreen Rappaport. And she talks about the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., words she describes as simple and direct, yet profound and poetic. Let's read some of those words now. Everywhere in Martin's hometown, he saw the signs, whites only. His mother said these signs were in all southern cities and towns in the United States. Every time Martin read the words, he felt bad, until he remembered what his mother told him.
You are as good as anyone.
In church, Martin sang hymns. He read from the Bible. He listened to his father preach. These words made him feel good.
When I grow up, I'm going to get big words too.
Martin grew up. He became a minister like his father, and he used the big words he had heard as a child from his parents and from the Bible.
Everyone can be great.
He studied the teachings of Mahatma Gandhi. He learned how the Indian nation won freedom without ever firing a gun. Martin said love when others said hate.
Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that.
He said together when others said separate. He said peace when others said war.
Sooner or later, all the people of the world will have to discover a way to live together.
In 1955, on a cold December day in Montgomery, Alabama, Rosa Parks was coming home from work. A white man told her to get up from her seat on the bus so he could sit. She said no and was arrested. Montgomery's black citizens learned of her arrest. It made them angry. They decided not to ride the buses until they could sit where they wanted. For 381 days, they walked to work and school and church. They walked in rain and cold and in blistering heat. Martin walked with them and talked with them and sang with them and prayed with them until the white city leaders had to agree they could sit anywhere they wanted.
When the history books are written, someone will say, there lived black people who had the courage to stand up for their rights.
In the next 10 years, black Americans all over the South protested for equal rights. Martin walked with them and talked with them and sang with them and prayed with them. White ministers told them to stop. Mayors and governors and police chiefs and judges ordered them to stop, but they kept on marching.
Wait. For years I have heard the word wait. We have waited more than 340 years for our rights.
They were jailed and beaten and murdered, but they kept on marching. Some black Americans wanted to fight back with their fists. Martin convinced them not to by reminding them of the power of love.
Love is the key to the problems of the world.
Many white Southerners hated and feared Martin's words. A few threatened to kill him and his family. His house was bombed. His brother's house was bombed. But he refused to stop.
Remember, if I am stopped, this movement will not be stopped, because God is with this movement.
The marches continued. More and more Americans listened to Martin's words. He shared his dreams and filled them with hope.
I have a dream that one day in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers.
After 10 years of protests, the lawmakers in Washington voted to end segregation. The white-only signs in the South came down. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. cared about all Americans. He cared about people all over the world, and people all over the world admired him. In 1964, he won the Nobel Peace Prize. He won it because he taught others to fight with words, not fists. Martin went wherever people needed help. In April 1968, he went to Memphis, Tennessee. He went to help garbage collectors who were on strike. He walked with them and talked with them and sang with them and prayed with them. And on his second day there, he was shot. He died. His big words are alive for us today. And there ends our story. And we could sing our children to their classes this morning.
It's a privilege to present this service today, written by Reverend Clyde Grubbs and Mary Jane Holden, adapted by Reverend Erica Hewitt. You're about to hear the story of the Civil Rights Movement, a story that needs to be told over and over so that we remember its people and its principles. But it's not a comfortable story, nor should it be. In fact, I wish you discomfort as the story and its pictures unfold. I wish you anger and unrest. I wish you holy agitation. I wish for all of us to leave this sanctuary at the end of this hour with fresh honor and appreciation for the mighty struggle that took place in our country in the 1960s. And for the ways that this struggle continues today. In order to understand the power and meaning of the life of Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., we have to go back in history and explain who Jim Crow was.
Jim Crow was a character in the minstrel shows that white Americans flocked to in the middle of the 19th century. The shows were full of music and dancing, clowns and skits. Jim Crow was a black-faced actor, and the comedy was to depict African Americans as stupid, people to be made fun of.
For many white Americans, Jim Crow defined what real African Americans were supposed to be like. So in the wake of the Civil War and Reconstruction, when the white power structure of the southern states tried to find a way to continue the oppression of now free African Americans and instituted a group of laws putting African Americans in second-class status, they named those laws after the clown character Jim Crow.
Jim Crow laws kept black people in separate schools and in menial jobs. They effectively denied African American people the right to vote by requiring that they take a test on the U.S. Constitution, which was waived for white people. And the examiners always found that African Americans failed the test. There was also a tax on voting in some jurisdictions, which kept poor voters, which African Americans most often were, off the voting lists.
One of the most humiliating Jim Crow laws was the racial segregation of public transportation. White folks rode in the front of the bus and black folks rode in the back. There were little signs along the bus aisle that indicated white or black. These signs could be flipped and African Americans told to stand if the white section filled up.
The African American people struggled against Jim Crow laws since their inception, But in 1954, the Supreme Court made a landmark decision. In Brown versus the Board of Education, the court made it clear that laws setting up separate schools were unconstitutional. Separate schools were inherently unequal, and they therefore violated the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution. It was clear that Brown versus Board of Education meant to end an end to all forms of racial segregation in public facilities, but local Jim Crow laws would need to be overcome one by one.
Will you join me now in a time of prayer and meditation? And this prayer is from Reverend Viola Abbott. Let us open our hearts and still our minds. Let us call forth and hold in our hearts the stories of all who have come before us, the memories of those who are with us today, and the hope for tomorrow and for all of those who will come after us. Let us be thankful for this opportunity for healing, forgiveness, and reconciliation, while knowing that we can never and should never forget what has brought us here today. Let us be glad that voice has not only been given to those whose sorrow and pain were their companions, but that the stories told by those voices have been received with a goal of redemption and understanding. Let us call upon that light which shines in each of us to give us the strength to walk together into the future and do the work that is necessary, which does not end here today. Let us have the wisdom to lovingly have the conversations we need to have with each other, that we must have with each other in order to grow this faith in radical love and inclusion. May it be so, and amen. And now, in a moment of silence, let us each remember the promises that we have made to one another.
Rosa Parks. Not really. It began long before then, in 100 different places, in 100 different ways.
It began in Africa. It began when the first slaves were brought to America. It began with the Proclamation, with the Civil War and the Reconstruction, with all those broken promises.
But for the public person we remember today, for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the world he changed, you could say it began with Rosa Parks.
December 1st, 1955, Montgomery, Alabama, bus number 2857. Rosa Parks, 42 years old, who was sitting in the front row of the black-only bus seats. A bus driver named Jimmy Blake told this little slip of a colored woman to get up out of her seat so a white man could sit down.
And Rosa Parks said no. No, I will not. I am cold and I'm tired and I got here first and I'm sitting.
While she waited, Jimmy Blake went to call the police. She got arrested and hauled away.
Ms. Parks wasn't the first person to protest bus segregation. Irene Morgan had done the same thing 9 years before, and Sarah Keyes had done it just a few months earlier. The U.S. Supreme Court had already said she didn't have to move. She had rights. But this time, somebody noticed. In fact, everybody noticed. And that's how the Birmingham bus boycott began and how Martin Luther King Jr. found her.
There's no denying it. Rosa Parks was making a point, and she knew it. She was the secretary of the Montgomery chapter of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, or NAACP. When she said no to Jimmy Blake, she was already a worker for civil rights and racial equality. But still, this was the moment. She was tired of giving in, and she wasn't going to do it anymore. And she suffered for it. She lost her job as a seamstress in a local department store, but she started a movement.
E.D. Nixon, president of the local NAACP, wanted Rosa Parks' arrest to be a test case so that Montgomery's black citizens could challenge the city's segregationist laws. He and the other leaders of the movement had actually been waiting for a case like this, for an act of injustice that would galvanize the black community and drive them into action.
After Rosa Parks was arrested, E.D. Nixon organized a meeting of local ministers at the home church of young minister Martin Luther King Jr. A little later on, King was elected to lead the boycott, mainly because he was new in town and unknown, and the city fathers of Montgomery hadn't had a chance to intimidate him. E.D. Nixon actually had to push Reverend King to get him to take the job, but he did it, finally, and the world started to change. The night of Rosa Parks' arrest, Joanne Robinson, head of the Women's Political Council, printed and circulated a flyer throughout Montgomery's black community.
Another woman has been arrested and thrown in jail because she refused to get up out of her seat on the bus for a white person to sit down. This has to be stopped. The next time it may be you or your daughter or mother. This woman's case will come up on Monday. We are therefore asking every Negro to stay off the buses Monday in protest of the arrest and trial. Don't ride the buses to work, to town, to school, or anywhere on Monday. You can afford to stay out of school for one day if you have no other way to go except by bus. You can also afford to stay out of town for one day. If you work, take a cab or walk. But please, please, children and grown-ups, don't ride the bus at all on Monday.
That was December 2nd. On December 3rd, almost no black people rode the buses in Montgomery, Alabama. Instead, boycotters just stayed home or organized carpools. Some housewives even drove their black domestic servants to work. whether they were sympathetic to the cause or just wanted to not have their servants miss a day of work.
Dr. King said it best himself. A miracle has taken place.
The city didn't like that. They pressured local insurance companies to stop insuring cars used in carpools. So the boycott leaders arranged policies with Lloyd's of London.
Black taxi drivers helped too. They charged their black fares only 10 cents for a ride, the same price as a bus ride. And when the city officials heard about that, they passed a law saying it was illegal to charge a rider less than 45 cents. That didn't stop it either. It just got bigger.
People started riding bicycles. They started walking. They even rolled mules and horse-drawn buggies. And across the county, black churches raised money to support the boycott. They even collected shoes to replace the worn-out footwear of Montgomery's black citizens.
The white racist power structure, part of a group called the White Citizens Council, fought back. Martin Luther King Jr.'s and Ralph Abernathy's houses were firebombed. So were 4 black Baptist churches. Boycotters were attacked and beaten all over town. Finally, the city of Montgomery hauled out a law passed way back in 1921 and started arresting protesters for hindering a bus. And one of those arrested was King. He ended up spending 2 weeks in prison and became a national celebrity. Much later, Dr. King said,
I was proud of my crime. It was the crime of joining my people in a nonviolent protest against injustice.
The Montgomery bus boycott was an 11-month mass protest that ended with the U.S. Supreme Court ruling that public bus segregation is unconstitutional. Dr. King saw it was about much more than that. It wasn't just about a black woman in Montgomery getting pushed around. It wasn't just about one law in one city. It was about the rights of all black people. It was time to stand up. King said,
And let us join together. In all of our actions, we must stick together. Unity is the great need of the hour. And if we are united, we can get many of the things that we not only desire, but which we justly deserve.
By the way, Rosa Parks came out okay. She was awarded the Congressional Gold Medal, and there's a statue of her in the National Statuary Hall. When she died, she lay in honor in the Capitol Rotunda in Washington, D.C. Only the 3rd private citizen to lie in honor in the Rotunda, Rosa Parks.
Please rise now and body your spirit. For hymn 169, We Shall Overcome.
Someday
1963, the civil rights movement had grown into a national movement. There had been sit-ins at lunch counters, voter registration drives, freedom rides on interstate buses, and many school districts had accepted school desegregation. But there was still fierce resistance in a number of states, including Alabama. Governor George Wallace and the officials in a number of locales vowed to resist even in the face of court decisions and growing federal pressure. Wallace had just become governor of Alabama. His inaugural speech contained these words: "In the name of the greatest people that have ever trod this earth, I draw the line in the dust and toss the gauntlet before the feet of tyranny. And I say segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever." Wallace would be proven wrong, but it took several years of determined effort to overcome Alabama's white supremacist power structure.
Birmingham, Alabama, 1963. Martin Luther King Jr.'s and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference's, that's SCLC, nonviolent approach to social change was truly taking hold, and its leadership agreed. It is time to attack it head-on and to do it in the center of the segregationist resistance. Like now, Congressman John Lewis said,
"Our goal in Birmingham was larger than ending segregation in one southern city. It was our hope that our efforts in Birmingham would dramatize the fight and determination of African American citizens in all the southern states, and that we would force the Kennedy administration to draft and push through Congress a comprehensive Civil Rights Act outlawing segregation and racial discrimination in public accommodations, employment, and education."
Bull Connor, Birmingham's Commissioner of Public Safety, was a determined segregationist. So when SCLC finally launched its anti-segregation campaign in early April, Bull Connor put up a wall of resistance.
It started with a mass meeting and direct action. King talked endlessly about the philosophy of nonviolence and its methods, and gathered volunteers for lunch counter sit-ins, marches on city halls, a boycott of downtown merchants. The number of volunteers increased every day. Now there were kneel-ins at churches, sit-ins at the library, and a march on the county building to mark the opening of a voter registration drive.
On April 10th, the city government got a court injunction ordering an end to all protests. But Martin Luther King Jr. and the SCLC disobeyed the court order. King declared,
"We cannot in all good conscience obey such an injunction which is unjust, undemocratic, and unconstitutional misuse of the legal process."
King himself knew he would be arrested if he kept on going, and he worried about that. They were running out of money, and Dr. King was good at fundraising. He wondered if he could do more on the outside than on the inside. But finally, he decided he had to go to jail in Birmingham. "Friends," he said,
"I have to make a faith act. I don't know what will happen or what the outcome will be. I don't know where the money will come from." But on April 12th, he got himself arrested for violating the court order, and he was slammed into solitary confinement.
he wasn't even allowed to call his wife Coretta, who was home recovering from giving birth. Attorney General Bobby Kennedy and President John F. Kennedy had to put pressure on the judges personally just so King could call home.
Finally, after a huge movement all across the country just to raise the money, King was released on April 19th, 1963.
During his time in jail, Dr. King came to recognize how big the movement was becoming. It wasn't just about the Deep South anymore, even though that's where the oppression of black people was the worst and had lasted the longest. No, this was about black people all across the country. In his famous letter from Birmingham jail, he wrote, and let's all join in, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Never again can we afford to live with the narrow, provincial, outside agitator idea. Anyone who lives inside the United States can never be considered an outsider anywhere within its bounds."
But change didn't happen just because he was released from jail. There had to be a way to keep the pressure up, to make the civil rights movement a truly national event.
And that's when the children came. The grown-ups in the movement wanted to keep up the pressure. They really wanted things to change. So they asked high school students to get involved in the demonstrations.
They had no idea what a lion they were unleashing.
On May 2nd, barely 2 weeks after King's release, more than 1,000 black children came together to protest in Birmingham, Alabama. 900 of them were arrested. The next day, nearly 2,500 more took their place.
And Bull Connor, still in control, couldn't stand it. He kept his people under control until then, much as he hated it, but now...
He ordered firefighters to turn their hoses on the protesters.
He told police officers to let their dogs loose and chase those children down.
In pictures that were broadcast and printed all over the country, nonviolent protesters were seen being beaten by angry police officers. Children were driven to the ground.
John Lewis said, "We didn't fully comprehend at first what was happening. We were witnessing police violence and brutality, Birmingham style. Unfortunately for Bull Connor, so was the rest of the world."
Agreements started to be made. Pledges for the desegregation of public accommodations, for more fair hiring practices, for better communication between black and white leaders.
But the white racists couldn't stand that. The home of Dr. King's brother was bombed. Another bomb was planted near the motel where King was staying. A bomb went off on Sunday at 9:45 a.m. at the 16th Street Baptist Church and killed 4 little girls.
It killed 4 little girls at Sunday school. It was a national issue now. It was time for everyone, young, old, rich, and poor, to join in solidarity together.
On August 28, 1963, more than 200,000 demonstrators showed up in Washington, D.C. and marched to the Lincoln Memorial. That's where Martin Luther King Jr. gave the speech that everyone remembers, the speech about his dream that became everybody's dream. It's now the time in our service to give and receive our offering. Please know that this morning, half of the non-pledge offering will be donated to UUs for a just economic community. The UUJEC is a vibrant, progressive organization committed to economic justice for all. Their work contributes to a broader movement for social change in collaboration with the UUA, the UU Service Committee, and grassroots organizations. They seek to inspire and help UUs to study society's economic and social systems and advocate for justice issues. The other half of the offering will support programs here in our fellowship that make this a community of inspiration and transformation. We will pass the baskets here in Fellowship Hall, and for those of you joining us via Zoom today, you can visit the website to make your contribution. And if you are visiting here with us today, please know that your presence is gift enough. And now we'll have more special music from Women in the Round.
Martin Luther King Jr. did not ask to be the leader of the civil rights movement. The Montgomery NAACP was looking for a spokesperson, and Martin Luther King Jr. was asked to speak on their behalf. The bus boycott made national news, and the young minister became a national figure. He had read about Gandhi in college and had training in nonviolent resistance. But lead a mass movement based on those principles? That was a new thing.
Over the course of the 11 years after Montgomery, Martin Luther King Jr. became a world figure. He was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. He was also expanding his vision, how to achieve real equality, real freedom for African Americans. He began to see that this would go beyond civil rights, that is, equal legal rights.
He began to see that the problem was unequal distribution of wealth, that white, Asian, Latino, Native American, and African Americans were all suffering together in a system that perpetuated inequality and poverty. In the last days of his life, he became critical of the corporate power structure and of U.S. foreign policy.
He began to see the struggles in Africa and Latin America and Vietnam against colonialism as part of the same struggle that he was engaged in. He made plans to join the civil rights movement with the labor movement in what he described as a poor people's movement. He died in Memphis, Tennessee. He was there to support the sanitation workers' strike, a strike of white workers and African American workers who had united in the Deep South for their rights to organization and decent wages.
The concrete results of the movement changed the world. The Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965. They led directly to the enfranchisement of African Americans and directly to the inauguration day the country celebrated when our first African American president took office.
But in the final days of his life, Dr. King saw his mission widen even more as the war in Vietnam grew deeper and wider, as thousands and thousands of Black people and white people and Asian people on both sides of the war continued to die. He saw that the quest for civil rights was a quest for human rights, that it was about the oppression of all people of every race all around the world.
Today, we honor Martin Luther King Jr. We give thanks for the movement that changed the world for the better and continues to change it today.
And we remind ourselves of whatever color we are, wherever we come from, whoever we are, this is our movement too.
We are all part of the plan. We are all citizens of the world. At the beginning of our service today, I wished you discomfort, unrest, and holy agitation. How will we move forward today into the continuing struggle to recognize the racism and culture of white supremacy in which all of our institutions and all Americans are steeped? Our closing hymn today is known as the Black National Anthem, and it is, in the words of Aisha Ansano, a very powerful song, but it's often sung without context, and at times it's sung without a lot of intentionality. These are Aisha's words, quote, "It's easy to open the hymnal and sing along without necessarily processing what we're saying, what the words we're saying really mean. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Bitter the chastening rod felt in the days when hope unborn had died. We have come over a way that with tears have been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughter." This song deserves to be sung with attention. It's a song that starkly names the horrors and violence of racism in this country. And it is a song that should make us uncomfortable. Uncomfortable with the history that it calls upon. Uncomfortable with the fact that the struggle for racial justice continues and has not come quite so far as it should have by now. How can anyone sing the words, "treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered," without a deep, deep discomfort? So when we sing this song, will you join me in singing with intentionality? Will you join me in the deep discomfort that I will be feeling in singing those words? Discomfort with the pain and horror that these words refer to, and discomfort with the fact that those words do not only refer to a distant history, but also what is happening now. Will you commit to sitting with your own discomfort, and then will you tap into that discomfort and do something? Will you now rise in body and spirit and lift your voice and sing until earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty?
Every
closing words are from Reverend Rebecca Savage. Spirit of life, spirit of love, we have gathered under the banner of a shared faith. We are born of a welcoming grace that extends and receives love. And we are touched by the ways we have fallen short of who we strive to be. And here we are reborn, forged by a greater courage. Let us move from this place encouraged and refreshed for the journey ahead. Go now in peace.